Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another episode of the 5G Guys. I'm Wayne Smith and joined by my co-host, Dan McBall.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us again for another episode. Great to have you back. We're excited today to have Fred Teichman with GoGo Wireless as our guest. Fred is a senior network deployment engineer who has over 35 years of experience in the telecom industry, installing wireless networks all around the country. He started in the early days of microwave for long-distance telephone. He's worked in public safety critical backhaul systems and worked on multiple technology generations for cellular, including 5G. Fred was an active tower climber for 9 years and grew to senior levels of management with a full responsibility for profit and loss for many general contractors. He's been a hands-on builder, modifier, and demolished almost every kind of tower you can think of. So a lot of experience on the building of cell sites and towers. During expansion years, he's been part of 10 acquisitions, and he's had the opportunity to work directly for numerous construction service, product manufacturers, and tower owners. Fred is an active drone pilot with an FAA Part 107 license. He's a certified rescue climber and also holds an OSHA 30 certification, which basically means he knows what he's doing when it comes to safety around a tower. So for the last 3 years, he's worked with an EU company here established in the US. Today, he's focused on working with GoGo Wireless, deploying their 5G network for business aviation nationwide. So Fred, we're excited to have you and looking forward to learning more about how cellular works in the skies. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Wayne. Nice to meet you both.
So Wayne, I know we've talked a lot about other parts of wireless technology leading up to today's episode, whether it be satellite, cellular, Wi-Fi. You know, cellular in the air is something that we've wanted to talk about. What are some things that you're thinking about when you want to tee things up with Fred?
Yeah, so it's an interesting subject. It really got everyone's attention with the 5G rollout this year and the airport exclusion zones that came up from it from the FCC. But yeah, I think, Fred, how does it work? We're all on the plane, as soon as the plane takes off, we're waiting to connect to Wi-Fi so that we can continue on our digital lives while we're flying across the country. So I think one of the first things is, just basically kind of give us an idea on how the technology works. How do they get the signal and how does it maintain and hand off through the sky on your trips?
Yeah, of course. Well, there's two basic approaches. One is a satellite and the other is an ATG, air-to-ground network. My responsibility is heavily focused on the air-to-ground network. So in which case, it's broadband internet service, but it acts just like cellular. So the towers are strategically located. They communicate and talk and hand off to each other. We call them neighboring towers, but it really works just like cellular. So it depends on the type of customer and whether they're utilizing satellite or whether they're utilizing the ATG, air-to-ground network.
Got it. So in our Cellular 101 episode that we did last season, we explained the concept. And for those listeners that may not have checked that out, go check that episode out. But basically, the term cellular is because the towers are forming cells like a cell of a body, right, that are connected. And as you move, you kind of move from one cell to the next. And so it sounds like the air-to-ground network that GoGo uses is very similar.
It's exactly the same, yeah. So the network consists of about 256 towers across the United States, the continental North United States. And just like the flight patterns, whether it be a commercial or business aviation flight patterns, the airplanes will utilize it, usually connecting at horizon level, so 3,000, and will stay connected all the way up to 40,000. So in the commercial flights, when they restrict you from utilizing it until they're over 10,000 feet, it just relies a lot more on the satellite network. But on the air-to-ground network, we're able to connect a lot sooner. With the newer technologies that we're rolling out, we have the ability to launch the same technology, of course, in the 5G world, but with 150 towers for the initial launch. So we're, again, covering 3,000 to 40,000 feet with only 150 towers across all of the United States.
Yeah. Most airlines have flight plans, and the flight plans are they pretty standard? So that's how you can build towers. And does that match the airline's flight plans?
Very much so. Yeah. So the initial network as it rolled out, and we'll go into some of the history of kind of how it's evolved, but the initial network for commercial aviation and the air-to-ground network started right around 2008. And that was exactly what they did, is they followed all of the commercial flight plans. As GoGo's evolved, our focus is more towards business aviation. And as we've gone through the pandemic, and as technology has evolved, there's so many more people going to the sky that business aviation business is extremely booming over the years. And it allows us now, our network has to cover wherever they want to go. And so our 5G rollout doesn't necessarily mirror exactly where our legacy or original networks were that tailored toward the commercial industry.
Hey, real quick, a quick word of thanks to today's sponsor, Vertex Innovations, before we get started. For over 17 years, Vertex has been building the nation's wireless and broadband networks. Providing project management, network engineering, and construction oversight are just some of the ways Vertex helps their clients. So if you're looking for more of a partner to help you with your wireless network designs, construction, implementation, or operations, reach out to Vertex. You can find them at vertex-us.com. That's VERTEX-US.com. That's interesting. Yeah, I want to touch on that a little bit as we continue talking. But from a history standpoint, you started to touch on that. Maybe give us a little bit of background of where you guys came from first historically, and what the technology was like leading up to where you're at today with your 5G rollout.
Sure. So what I've been able to learn through the interaction of our RF and our design development, all that, it literally started almost 30 years ago in the concept. And then we were one of the few, and the first one, to be able to be issued licensing in the 800 megahertz spectrum to be able to build the air-to-ground network. So it's a combination of both satellite and air-to-ground, but our business focus is air-to-ground. So as over the years, in 97, we were authorized first generation. So just like cellular, where it was the very first technology, then 2G, then 3G, and now we're in the stages of being able to roll out 5G.
Got it. So when you're on a plane and you're using the GoGo network, is your cell phone using its cellular service, or are you using Wi-Fi and the cellular service is basically providing broadband to the plane?
Yeah, great question. It's actually the connectivity of that plane. So one of the things that GoGo does, their unique business approaches, is they own the frequencies, they own the technology that creates that Wi-Fi environment inside the plane. And then they have, it's called Advanced 3 and Advanced 5, which are the different levels that are in preparation of how many units, the connectivity. So it creates a perfect Wi-Fi environment in that plane so that you're able to utilize all of your own personal devices. So, but that's evolved over the years. So when it first started off, it's just like cellular, it was, push to talk, be able to communicate, be able to text. And then once it started turning into more of a Wi-Fi environment, as it's advanced, then we were able to support all of the entertainment, streaming video, and you name it.
Wow. It's pretty amazing. I just took a flight back from LA yesterday, and first thing I did was get on there and check my email. And I used GoGo's network. I was on a Delta flight and connected right up, provided the service that I needed. I was able to work the whole way, which makes it really convenient. One of the things, as we've always been told, since it's using Wi-Fi and not cellular, is that the main difference? How you can use it on an airplane? Because we're still doing. Hey, make sure your plane's in airplane mode. Make sure your cell phone's in airplane mode when you get on a plane, right? But both of them are frequencies. How come Wi-Fi versus cellular you're allowed to use it? Do you know that?
To the level of detail, no. Understanding the different frequencies, yes. We're in a different frequency band. So what we do allow is the ability to create that environment. So when it comes to interference with the aircraft itself, part of our technology allows us to filter. We're one of the few, even though we're an internet provider, we're kind of viewed as a carrier as well. We're one of the few that actually do a tremendous amount of filtering so that we can manage those frequencies very tightly. That filtering allows us to be able to monitor and manage those types of interferences.
So do you guys have a 4G network now, or what does your legacy network look like now prior to the 5G network you're rolling out?
It's actually a combination of 3 and 4G. So the air-to-ground network is really more of a 3G build, However, with the advancements of technology, of the equipment that we put into the planes, the L3, we're able to represent a G-type environment. So we're kind of like a carrier and the equipment manufacturer. So kind of like iPhone and AT&T combined. We're doing all the communications. We just create a Wi-Fi environment inside that plane. But we're that connectivity of not just the antenna on the plane, but the technology that allows to be able to maximize it. So when we're rolling out 5G, we can clearly say it's true 5G because we're doing it from the beginning to the end. Everything from the connectivity of the backhaul to our servers, back to the switch, to the cell sites themselves, to the technology that's on the plane will be at a true 5G speed.
It's interesting to hear you say that, to get your 5G network launched, you need, I think you said 150 sites, and you're looking upwards of, high 200 to 300 sites to cover the continental U.S. Just for our listeners' perspective, a typical cellular carrier on the terrestrial side has thousands of sites in a major city.
Correct.
So it's quite a big difference. Help us understand what's the reasoning for that. I mean, as an engineer, I understand, but help our listeners understand why you need so much fewer sites.
Well, number one is the obstructions. So we're shooting horizon and up. So we'll actually locate our sites remote, mountainous, flat plains away from people because we're covering the sky. And then the interruptions and the geographical curvatures aren't necessarily in the sky, they are on the land. So the cellular carriers are trying to penetrate volume of individual users through a very rough terrain and obstacles and buildings and everything. We're actually doing the opposite. We're shooting clear into the sky. We have less users, but our aircraft are having multiple users within that aircraft. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So an average cell site for us, we can get anywhere from 200 to 250 mile radius of coverage and then interact and hand off to its neighbors. So it just takes less sites based on the topography of the sky versus topography of the land.
Sure. And from a capacity standpoint, while I'm sure you've got quite a few customers, you don't have anywhere near the number of customers on the terrestrial network. So you don't need to have the additional sites for capacity that terrestrial networks need as well.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. I mean, one site, 250-mile radius around it covers a lot. I mean, you don't need that many to cover the whole continental U.S.
Yeah, it is. We kind of call it a niche. So we've all been in the industry a long time. We've all worked for different customers, and the high volume, I guess you could say, it kind of wears on you. What I like about GoGo is the uniqueness of it. What the challenges we have is that geographically service companies that help us deploy, maintain, operate, upgrade, they have to travel so far, and having one general contractor supporting us from the West Coast all the way to the East Coast is not economically. So we have to have a lot of different relationships, and we geographically target so that the response time allows us to be able to maintain and keep the network safe and healthy.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I know you guys have some competitors that do the same thing or similar. Help us understand what's different about how GoGo is going about business and or technology from maybe some of your competitors out there.
I believe it's our approach to the patents, the frequencies, our controlled spectrum, our history in the industry. We've been around a long time, that the aviation supply chain understands who we are, builds that credibility, that reliability. A very innovative company when it comes to custom building the antennas, the technology for it to work. So we're not a cellular company that's just buying a cellular, the servers off the shelf that's going to work for us. We're very, very customizable towards what works best for our network. So there's a lot of what I call secret sauce that goes behind that scenes. And in my little bit of time, I get to dip into it a little bit. It's amazing the level of intensity and focus we put into testing and not troubleshooting, but just testing proof of concept before we go and roll out, before we engage and have a relationship with an OEM because of a long-term commitment. So we do a lot of assembly of that technology and installation ourselves, but we rely on a lot of the OEMs to support us. But it's amazing. It'll take 2-3 years to be able to establish what we plan to do in the future.
And I think you said earlier that you're starting to really focus more on the private business aviation versus commercial aviation. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, correct. So GoGo is a publicly traded company, and it officially in December of 2020 sold off its commercial division to a satellite company called Intelsat. Public knowledge, well documented, good relationship. They are continuing to use our air to ground. We're continuing to have a partnership with them, but our primary focus is now 100% business aviation. So it went from originally back in the early, the 1991 to 1997, we were AirCell all the way up until probably, if I remember correctly, 2011, 2012, when AirCell rebranded its name as GoGo. And now we're GoGo Business Aviation because we're primarily focused on business aviation. I like to kind of use the analogy as if we were a car salesman. We're not selling Chevys. We're now, we're selling to Mercedes. We're higher end. Business aviation it wants to go where it wants to go. And that's the exciting part about getting our network to be able to meet their needs and not necessarily just a well-defined commercial route. So we are GoGo Business Aviation, and we're the ones launching the 5G. And what's really exciting is this is the first time that GoGo has actually wanted to market and showcase us building that network. And we've been doing video streams on some of the actual 5G installations. So of the 150 sites that we're building, we've got a number of them built. We've actually filmed at quite a few of them so that we could display those at some of the aviation trade shows. We're an aviation company. And then what was really exciting is in just last week, we were at one of the aviation trade shows and we did a live stream. And in a live stream interview on a job site when we're actually building the site and raising the antennas on the tower. And it was a site in Louisiana that all high elevated platforms, freighters going out the Mississippi, right out to the Gulf. It was actually visually very pleasing. So we had a blast and all kinds of awards and congratulations that we made that aviation trade show a hit because of our live stream and the continuous feed videos of us building the network.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, definitely. It seems, and so just to make sure I understand and clarification. So just like I was flying a commercial airline, and so you're still going down that path with some carriers, but also when you mean private business travel, we mean like there's been an uptick in folks using private jets also on those types of private jets and that type of travel also. Huh?
Yeah, very much so. Business aviation. So we still have the partnerships and the relationships with commercial aviation to provide that service, but we're initially rolling out the 5G specifically for business aviation for it to be able to maximize the market share of business aviation.
Yeah, pretty amazing technology.
Yeah.
And you said one of the questions I wanted to ask you, and I think you touched on it earlier, was that the pandemic definitely sounds like it's influenced your technology deployment plans, your business model, even to push you maybe more towards that business side. Did I understand you to say that correctly?
Yeah, that's a great perspective. We were definitely affected by it. All flying travel was affected by it, but it quickly came back, and now it's at a level that it was pre and exceeding before the pandemic. So it just identified and supported our business focus to be able to really gear towards the business aviation because of all the indicators. Used planes resales are an all-time high. The demand for the equipment is an all-time high. Flight schools are an all-time high. People want to be able to go and go where they want to go. And the business aviation industry is just booming. So that's where the company, now I'm not part of the teams that made that decision. I'm just getting a chance to help enhance that network with the 5G so that we can continue to support and be the leaders in the industry.
Got it. We had a couple of episodes over the last 6 months. Wayne and I have talked a lot about what's been going on with the news. If listeners haven't listened or heard the news about 5G spectrum that Verizon and AT&T are rolling out on C-band, and the issues that have come up around interference concern with aviation altimeters that the commercial airlines and some military aircraft use. And as a result, as it's still being worked on today, as of this recording, it's still not been completely resolved. But as it stands right now, there's some exclusion zones around airports. where the carriers that are using C-band have to limit their power and or their deployment of 5G. Has that impacted you guys in any way? And I think I know the answer, but I thought I'd ask if that's impacted you guys in any way.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. The general public misunderstanding us, yes, it's impacted it from a little bit of a confusion, but we're rolling our 5G with a 2.4 unlicensed frequency, which is totally away from the C-band and the interference that they're talking about. So what we're rolling out won't affect it at all. We're actually building more and more, since it is 2. Unlicensed frequency, we're building more and more remote, away from people. So we monitor noise floors, some of our legacy sites. If in fact they're too much in a noise floor environment, then we'll actually build a new 5G site standalone. So of our network of 256 sites, we're building 150. About 80% of them are on our what we call legacy sites, or an overlay. We're adding a center line. We're utilizing our equipment in our own shelters. But on those other ones, we're doing standalone. So we're really getting away from people. So ironically, no, because of the frequencies, what we're going to be launching in, and then also because we're getting away farther and farther away from people. So it's kind of funny, as all the carriers are building more and more towards the population, and we're building farther away.
Well, and like you said, you guys, the air-to-ground network doesn't kick in until 3,000 feet elevation and above.
Correct.
Which you're going to be plenty away from the airport by that point.
Correct.
So you really don't need service near the airports.
Correct.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So just from a construction standpoint, since I built a lot of towers, and Dan, you're pointing the antennas up. Is that how it's done?
Yeah, that's actually probably one of the funnier topics that we go over with our GCs is, no, we don't have down tilt, we have up tilt. And we'll literally start at 0, and we say it's so important because our site's covering so far that when we say you got to be at 90 plumb, it's got to be at 90 or plumb, because 2 degrees off over that distance makes a huge difference. So when we launch, we go between 0 and 7, sometimes maybe up to 10 or 12 degree up tilt, but it really depends on where the neighboring sites are and the terrain is at. Again, we're going for clear horizon. What's also ironic is we're actually going lower center lines with our 5G. We call them lunch friendly to our tower, the GCs, so that they can come down for lunch. So the center lines are specifically lower because we're trying to accomplish so much of the horizon with the 5G. We're initially launching 150. We have other phases to, of course, fill those in, and then we'll optimize and make changes and start to do adjustments. But yeah, from 0 to 7 degrees up tilt. That's a mechanical. Then we have electronic up tilt as well.
And then your backhaul, because you're going, something you said you keyed on, that we're a remote and we're out. You're using just various different means to get that backhaul back to the other sites or back to the network. Microwave and is that correct to say? Because you may not have fiber in those remote environments.
Yeah. Fiber is always our first choice for the speed, but then again, it's microwave. That's our second choice, and we are rolling out a number of microwave hops specifically for the backhaul because that fiber isn't there yet. But it's actually quite pleasantly surprising that fiber is actually getting to more rural locations than you think. So when we initially know our legacy's there, and we evaluate every, obviously year, and we do upgrades, we keep well in tune with what our backhaul options are. And then can we upgrade because of speed and capacity? So, but yeah, fiber and microwave is our 2 best choices.
Pretty amazing technology it is. And it's definitely a niche where it's it's catered to this. Everything's designed around it, and it's a great user experience. I'll give you the props on that. I've been using it for years because it's been in the Delta, and Delta's kind of my airline, and I travel a lot, and it's super important to be able to stay connected during those hours.
I do remember the days when we used to get on a plane and like not being connected. We just didn't enjoy it once we landed. So now I guess it's like vacation. You'd rather stay connected all the time because getting caught back up is pretty hard sometimes.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you guys had some recordings and some live streams of some of your construction. Do you guys make that available to the general public?
We do. It's just geared more towards the aviation industry. So we had the live stream going, and the GCs that have supported us at those sites, we provide them video clips so that they can reshare those. What's what's funny is a lot of people in the wireless industry don't necessarily know what GoGo is unless you're active in building some of their sites.
Right.
And you never have thousands of sites. You usually only have, 2, 3, maybe 10, maybe 15 geographically, depending where your offices are. So we really tailor towards relationships being very geographically focused.
Well, for our listeners that maybe have never seen what a construction of a cell site looks like, tell us where listeners can find you guys and how they can maybe check out some of that cool video or learn more things about GoGo.
business.gogoair.com. Again, it's business.gogoair.com. And we actually have a 5G section in there that actually tracks our advancements. Everything from what the 5G antenna looks like to our initial test bed sites to our ability to showcase some of the construction activities. So it's a great source. And we're actually all trying to, whenever we can, become part of that so that we get that notoriety, I guess you could say.
Well, we'll definitely put a link to your website in the show notes. So check out the show notes afterwards. Any other ways people can connect with Fred or GoGo or stay in touch with what's going on in the business aviation world, we'll drop that in the show notes for you as well. We really appreciate you spending part of your busy time with us, Fred, and kind of filling our listeners in on the world of business aviation cellular.
There you go. Truly enjoy listening to you guys as well. So thanks for asking me.
Yep. It's good to understand, how different technologies are built. And you did a great job of explaining GoGos and how we get Wi-Fi in the airplane.
Excellent.
Thank you.
So thanks again for listening and tuning in. As always, go to 5gguys.com to connect with us, check out our blog post. We've had a lot of people requesting ability to check out a resource for all the acronyms that you hear all the time in technology. So we have a specific blog post on our website that you can check out. We'll put a link to that in our show notes as well, where you can go get a list of commonly used acronyms and stay up to speed on that front as well. So thanks again. Until next time. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the 5G Guys. For more resources and to connect with Dan and Wayne, check out their website at 5gguys.com. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that follow button and share this episode with your friends and family.